it definitely was.
That's a good car.
All right, Mike, what's the next one?
The next one is a Tatra 700.
So this one is a Czech company, so we don't know much about it.
Just because they didn't make a lot of cars, they mostly made
Didn't
their
make
money.
a big splash either. Like, it didn't make a splash in the auto industry.
No, it didn't. Well, a lot of it, they were selling heavy trucks, so they were mostly doing that. But they did decide to make cars for a little while. So this one has a V8 and it's a roomy interior, so it looks like a big old, just a full-size car, and it kind of resembles that now. Outside of that, it's
kind of looks like a Saab to me.
I saw that too a little bit. The trunk looks a little bit different, but outside of that, the body line.
Honestly, I just looked at the trunk. The picture is of the rear 3/4, and the roof line in the front remind me of like a Saab 900, but the rear reminds me like the trunk deck lid reminds me of like a Cadillac Eldorado of the same year.
It's got a lot of the hard lines. Like if I were to draw a car, or ask my son to draw a car, he would more or less imitate this type of car.
It's that little line right there by the logo that does like that reminds me of the Cadillac so much.
Oh, it does. It looks like one. It looked like one.
But it is a massive rear-mounted, air-cooled V8.
Yeah, not many of them.
Rear-mounted. Like, that's crazy.
That's probably why the trunk looks a little weird.
Probably.
Yeah, and they came with a 5-speed manual too.
It's just a car that I don't think I've ever seen. I didn't know anything about, and so when this list came about, I was like, it's just a weird car. I'm not going to even touch it. But the more I look at it, and the more I read about it, and the more I hear about it, it's pretty crazy. So, according to Hagerty, unfortunately, the T700 wasn't much of a hit. Many Czech buyers, now free to buy Western cars at the time, preferred something like a Mercedes or a BMW.
I don't blame them.
Tatra built fewer than 100 T700s, and in 1999, the company ended car production after a 102-year run.
If I got this, I would probably have to call it the Terminator. That's a T1000. Like this is a few short of the Terminator.
This is what they got before the T1000.
We got the T700s.
It's just a car.
I feel like if I saw this on the road, I wouldn't really. I don't think I would turn my head, but. At a car show or something and getting up close, like, the engines in the rear, like, that's pretty neat. Oh, it's a 5-speed.
Well, like you said, the car literally looks like the image of a car in your brain. So, if you were just trying to, if you just close your eyes for a second. We're going to do a little thought experiment.
My eyes are closed.
Okay, now draw a car. Now make it more car-like.
All right. So.
Now make it squarer.
Okay.
Now we're going to make sure the engine's in the back.
That's weird. All right.
You got it? You got that picture?
Yep, it's up there in the air.
Okay, now I want you to look at this. Yeah,
That's exactly
the visual people, the people on Facebook Live are going to see this. But, that's the car. It's just straight roof, kind of a front straight edge,
boxy.
And then boxy. It was built in the 90s, so boxy. Boxy was big.
Contrary to boxy, this next one is very... I like it. Honestly, I do. And that's the Toyota Classic.
If you've ever seen one of the taxis out of Europe, out of the UK, that's what this reminds me of, mixed with an old school Duesenberg. So in 1996, Toyota had a big birthday to celebrate. And what it did is it had a 60th. It basically was. It had been 60 years since the company built its very first automobile. They called that very first automobile the AA. And according to Toyota, as the Hagerty article reads, it was also the first all-Japanese-built passenger car. While not a groundbreaking design, the engine was copied by a copy from the Chevrolet of the same year of the DeSoto. It was still a big milestone for what would become the world's largest car maker. So this, according to them, was their very first all-Japanese-built car, like we said. Given that this was the 90s and Japanese at the time apparently were loving the retro style, they made this car look that retro-esque style. I'm doing air quotes with my fingers for those who are listening. It was a modern take on a car that started all of Toyota. So Toyota just sold 100 examples. And
all in two-tone black.
Yep. Basically, it was much like the Ford Model T when Ford was like, they can have any color they want, except it's got to be black. So it had I mean, they basically decked this thing out. So it was two-tone black and dark red with a wood rim steering wheel, wood trim on the inside, wood grain dashboard, leather seats, and although it looks like a car from the 1930s, the Toyota Classic is still all Toyota.
And it's something that's not fast. It's probably going to be a little difficult to drive to for what it looks like.
You know what's weird?
But it's unique, and I like it. I would want one.
It's funny. The more I stare at it, the more it screams Chrysler PT Cruiser.
Oh, you just ruined it for me. It does look like a PT Cruiser, just with like a bigger windscreen.
Like if I'm looking,
you could get a PT Cruiser. If you put a PT Cruiser with that paint scheme, like on the panels and stuff, it would look like this. Oh,
like
man.
as I'm looking at it from the A pillar, B pillar, C pillar up, like above the doors and just the windows and the glass, I could totally just see that's PT Cruiser. And then I look down, and all of a sudden I see these headlights that are popping out like an old school 30s car, a big 30s grill that almost looks like a Citroen grill. But yeah, that's
you ruined it.
I'm sorry.
I liked it. Now I'm like, PT Cruiser. But I mean, I can drive around PT Cruiser bruisers.
But you know that I think this apparently, if they only made 100 of these, it's going to be a super rare car, and for any collector who adds it to their collection, even though it has some PT Cruiser-esque lines to it, it is definitely still a very classy and very. I think it looks way better than a PT Cruiser. I thought this car was like just had like died in the 1930s and hadn't aged any. Right, like it was a Steve Rogers, a Captain America of the Japanese car, where it got frozen into ice and then was thawed out. 30 years later, 60 years later.
In it.
So this next car, I think, so this one's from the UK, and I definitely think this is going to be focused more towards our enthusiasts. However, it does have, as was pointed out by Jeremy Clarkson, it does have 4 seats.
Yeah, they're if you chop the legs off the person in the back, you probably get him to fit. But it's the TVR. I'm going to butcher the name, so I'm going to leave that to Matt.
It's a TVR Cerbera.
Cerbera.
Like Cerberus,
yes.
But Cerbera.
So it's named for Cerberus. That's actually what it was. The 3-headed dog that guards the underworld in Greek mythology. So you were correct. It was named after the 3-headed dog.
Whoop.
So it was TVR's flagship model during some of the company's best years. So Autocar called it one of the fastest, hardest production cars ever made. And I was listening to a Jeremy Clarkson one as well, a review on it, and he absolutely loved it. And he said that was one of the cars that actually scared him to death whenever he got on it.
Yeah, yeah. Now this, we were talking, and it looks very much like our 90s Viper.
Mm-hmm.
And
the rear end, definitely.
The rear end, and it's got like this scallop side panel.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't recall if it was actually done so, but like I don't know if they did it on purpose, but I believe that it came from the Viper chassis.
So it did have a drivetrain-wise, it did have a V8, flat crank, forged pistons and rods. It ranged from a 4.2 to 4.5 liters and 360 to 440 pounds, plus a 2+2 coupe.
Mm-hmm.
So
with
again,
those 4 seats.
Yeah, if you put the seats in there, you're not really going to fit somebody. Correct.
Air
so
quotes.
There was a lot of similarities to the Viper GTS for its time. The TVR also sold few Carabellas with a 4.0 liter speed 6 straight 6.
Cerberas. TVR. Cerberas.
Yeah.
It's all right.
I told you I wasn't.
It's a tough one. Cerebellums. Is that what you said?
I might have. I was thinking about it.
You were just thinking how big brained you got to be to buy this car. So yeah, and the crazy thing was, even though it had 440 horsepower, it still weighed about 800 pounds less than the Viper GTS that it kind of shared its look with. So. It's a beautiful car, and I mean, if you think of a TVR, like other than the CBR, like the TVR Speed 12, which in my mind is like every time I think of TVR, that's what I think of. Thanks to Gran Turismo and Forza for introducing me to that beast of a car. But this looks like its little brother. Like it's got lines, it's got everything.
It looks like a TVR.
Yeah, it looks like a fantastic TVR that everybody, if you rode up to this, they'd be like, oh, dang, that's a TVR. Like, it just screams it. And it's fiberglass, it's light, it's powerful, and it makes an awesomely mean sound. So it's really, really good.
Unfortunately, though, is the engines were not the most reliable, and even changing the alternator required pulling the engine out. So if you wanted to do a quick change, something went wrong with it, you would have to remove the engine to get to something similar. And a lot of them had rust issues too, so that was kind of a concern. So importing one of these would be a little risky in the idea of you don't know what you're going to get from a drivetrain point, and there's also the possibility of rust. And with that, rust is like a cancer.
And it is. Once it starts, it's probably in a bunch of other places too. Yeah. So we're not trying to say it's the same thing, but when it comes to body of cars and chassis and things like that, once you find it, you're going down a path of trying to find it elsewhere. So, we're not trying to say anything about cancer. So, cancer sucks, just FYI. With anything with TVR, build quality was kind of an issue. It was all over the place, so be mindful of that. But, yeah, very rare. It'll be a very rare car over here in the United States. So, if you got one, you'll probably be the only one in your state. The next one I actually think is pretty darn cool, and I've been looking at these for a while. Nissan came out with, around the same time as the GTR, a wagon. Now, anyone who knows me knows I love a fast wagon. So this one is the Nissan Stagea.
I feel like we should just be able to import every wagon. We are very limited on them.
We are very really limited. Cool. BMW had a couple. We had the Audi Allroad. We had the Volvos, which have been here the whole time. We've got the Mercedes. I'm just super stoked that that we're now bringing in the brand new 2021 Audi RS6 Avant. That is awesome. If you've got the cash and you got the ability, go buy yourself an Audi A6 Avant. It's the wagon, just beast, 590 horsepower. It's great. But that's not what we're talking about.
Thankfully, we had one of these cars to help pave the way for that.
Seriously, not many people in the United States know about this car. I think a lot more of the southern hemisphere people might know about this car. But in 1996, they brought this wagon out that utilized the drivetrain of the legendary R33.
So a lot of the parts are interchangeable, so you could actually make this thing relatively good just based off of the old R33 parts.
Yeah, seriously. So this had the RB straight 6 from the R33, so that's a 2.0 liter twin turbocharged. Went all the way up to when they bored it out to the R33 standard. It was a 2.6 RB26 DETT from the GTR, which was their hottest version. It's got hood scoops and everything, dude. It looks awesome. And this is going to be the craziest thing. This wagon also came with the GTR's all-wheel drive and all-wheel steering system, the ATT ESA, or Atessa E-TS all-wheel drive system.
Along with other handling parts, they had Brembo brakes, BBS forged alloy wheels, handling upgrades, a GTR steering wheel, and other interior improvements on top of the base model.
Here's the thing. If I didn't like the way that the R33 if I didn't like the way the R33 looked, rather, I think this car, if you import one, will be the sleeper of your neighborhood.
Oh, it would be fantastic.
You could definitely build that RB26 motor up and just haul some
groceries.
Groceries.
Yes.
Groceries. Haul some groceries. But seriously, it is a sleeper. It looks like an older Nissan wagon, but you could punch out 400 to 500 horsepower out of that motor easy, and just wreck some people. So, but it obviously then came with the benefit of being a wagon. So you could also put your dogs and all the lumber and stuff that you wanted into it. So, it's funny because you initially said a lot of people think about importing things JDM.
Yeah.
We've talked about quite a few JDMs already.
Yeah, we have, but there were some of the ones on there that aren't very common. And I think that's where
speaking of JDM, we got another JDM beast of a car.
Last one on our list, number 8. Mitsubishi Lancer.
It is the last one on the list, but we definitely have some more comments to add to this list.
We do. Well, then this list. It's the Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution IV.
God, that was loud as hell. I was trying to do that quiet.
Yeah, so this is the 6, right?
Yeah, no, this is the 4.
4. So it's 1 minus the number. I hate Roman numerals.
Yeah, this is a Roman numeral 1 to V.
So minus then is 4.
It's this way.
Whatever.
For our visual listeners. But yeah, so it's a Lancer Evolution 4. So we never got any of the Lancers, I think, before 9? No, 8. 8 was the first one we got. Yeah.